Well, we're here at MDI High School, and Chris Popper is joined by Christiane Cullens from the English department here at MDI High School as part of our ongoing series of Meet the MDI Teacher. And Christiane, you were nominated for the Maine Teacher of the Year back in 2013 for the 2014 year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And tell us a little bit about that process, if you would.
Well, basically, Charlie Johnson, who himself had been nominated for Teacher of the Year, I believe in 2008, is a colleague of mine. He teaches art here at the high school. He approached me, I'm going to say, late fall semester of 2012, and asked me if I would be open to a nomination. And I didn't really understand what all of that meant at the time, but I knew that he was a huge advocate for students, and I knew that he's a good guy and he's an excellent colleague, and so I decided to take it on. The year that I did the Maine Teacher of the Year process was a time of transition for the process. It had been overseen by the Department of Education for a long, long time, but there is a nonprofit of business owners and business people who are very dedicated to education in Maine, called Educate Maine, who took it over the year that I engaged the process. So things looked very different from how I kind of expected it to be, but it was in comparison to other states, it is extremely rigorous. I had to write a bunch of pieces arguing what my philosophy of education was and how I thought the community interfaced with school, or how they should interface with school, past accomplishments that I'd had, things like that. And I had to create a portfolio of work and beliefs, and I also had to give an oral presentation, and I also had a group of educational professionals from different walks of life come in and actually do a site visit where they talk to a panel of parents and a panel of students and a panel of colleagues.
Wow.
To get a sense of who I was and what I do. And they sat in on one of my classes as well. And then there was an oral presentation aspect of it as well. And had I gotten past that, there would have been another final interview phase.
Holy.
It was a lot of work. It was definitely a lot of work, and definitely a learning curve for everyone involved.
So tell us, you've been here for 16 years.
Correct.
And you teach English, and as we see here, you were telling me a little bit about this. This is the I guess tell us what this was again.
This beautiful mess is a lot like writing. This is a map. It's called a Thesis Paper Map, and basically what it does is it gives students a visual representation of what all the parts of a basic 5-paragraph thesis is, and where things go and why they go the way that they do, because we all, by the time I get them, I only teach sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Okay.
By the time I see them, they understand that the way that they want their information or they want their stories is in a particular narrative form or in a particular argumentative form, and they know A to B to C. That's how they want information. But when they're writing, and when most people write, they don't always understand that the writing process is way more recursive and divergent. So when we're writing, we always think of other things that we need to write. We're writing, and it never comes out logically from point A to point B. But we want our information like this.
I can see you've read some of my stories on the website.
So there's that, and also I think having kids really understand that there's a biological brain science reason why we want information the way that we want it, and that there's a reason why we should have 3 basic points. There are actual, reasons why things are the way that they are, and once they master those rules, they can start breaking them.
Oh, good. I've mastered that, so I've already gone to the breaking.
So that's appealing. But having kids know that their thoughts do have a place, they just need to figure out how and why their thoughts need to be ordered in a specific way or supported in a specific way, really helps them become more metacognitive of their writing process, and the fact that they look at writing as an actual process rather than a la chore that they just need to suffer through.
All right, so besides the structure of writing, what else do you teach, I mean, in terms of English? Because I know English is obviously so encompassing.
It's pretty huge. I think that in the past couple of years, obviously, we do 4 things with language. We read, we write, we speak, and we listen. We tend to put the speaking and the listening in terms of an academic arena. We don't think of them as being as important because it's about the academic reading and writing. This is what we're being tested on, the reading and writing, When I've found that through looking at structured class discussions and looking at listening and speaking styles and collaborative styles, kids can become very, very aware of who they are as a speaker and a listener, and how to use strategies to become more effective speakers and listeners has been really enlightening for me, because everything that I do is informed by my students. The only reason why my classes look the way that they do is because there's been 15 years worth of sophomores informing that practice over time.
I mean, there's no question, if you are speaking, and I mean, as these students become adults, they're going to go out into the world and they're going to have to make their opinions known.
Absolutely.
Whether they're in meetings or expressing themselves to colleagues.
Even in relationships, how do you assert yourself without feeling aggressive? And we have very candid discussions about that in class, and it's really, I have them, and also how to reflect effectively. How do you look back at your performance and your work and know what was a strength and what was a challenge, and how do you strategize to address those challenges, is really super useful. So those have been, I still do the reading and writing thing. That's super important. But having kids talk about active listening, especially when they're in their devices all the time. And I have a group of junior boys right now. Most of the class is boys. We talk, I also have them do elder interviews, and so they have an elder that they kind of talk about the larger philosophical issues that we bring up through the literature in our classes. The things that the first round table that we had, the first real class discussion, structured discussion we had, they really were, these are rough and tumble guys. Like, these are kids who don't play school well necessarily, but boy, they've got a lot to say and they've got a lot to offer. And they talked very explicitly how terrified and concerned they were that they don't know how to talk to people, especially girls. But the fact that it's become normal to ask a girl out over Facebook or over Twitter, and how that undermines that interpersonal literacy, how that undermines their ability to have a good relationship. And they were really looking for ways to understand how to listen actively to one another, and how to identify mentors in the community that will really help them understand the world at large and their place in it.
I mean, that's really interesting, because when you think about it, these kids grow up with a cell phone in their hands.
Yes, they do.
And I mean, my wife was telling me last night, you're addicted to technology. And I mean, as I sit here, and I know she's right. I go home, and because of my job, my laptop becomes out. I walk the dog, and I'm looking at Facebook, and my goodness, I'm looking at YouTube all the time.
It's a hole that you can fall into.
Oh, without any question. Without any question. And, it's nice to be able to, I guess, but it's also scary, I think, to be able, when you are so addicted to holding on to the cell phone or watching, or as you were saying, conversing with people over Facebook, that you forget how to one-on-one have a conversation.
It can be really challenging, and the kids know it on a visceral level that it's a deficit, and they know that it's a cultural deficit. They're really very concerned about it because they know that it affects them on a profound level. You know, they're really, really super clear about that, and they're actively looking for ways to do that. And as far as technology is concerned, technology is great, A, when it works, B, when
Yes.
it's a tool that helps us. But I definitely have moments in class where I'm like, okay, laptops down, this one's pencil and paper, because there is brain science that says that technology is not your friend in this particular context, in this particular moment. And getting teenagers to be able to start to mitigate and understand impulse control is super challenging, but they're grateful for the boundaries. They're grateful for the clarity of the expectation.
I mean, we sit here and we look at it, and I mean, we know that there are kids that can't do basic math without looking at a calculator. Yeah. Can't make change, and unless it comes up on the calculator. Spelling, and if there's not autocorrect.
I don't want to.
Well, I'm not
Yeah,
being.
I'm a bit of an iconoclast sometimes because Shakespeare couldn't decide how to spell his own name, in some ways. And
Right.
So, when we look at, and I realize how incendiary that is, but, it's about knowing your audience. It's about knowing with whom you're speaking and what the purpose of your speaking is. If you're just texting to your wife and you misspell something,
Right.
Nobody cares.
Right.
But if you're writing a letter to your congressperson about affecting change on an issue that you care about, you probably want those strategies in place. And if those strategies are an autocorrect or having somebody else edit it and look at your piece of writing.
Well, I'm not saying that that's bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you've got to be able to have that foundation.
Yeah.
When I went to school in Bermuda, and we had a English headmaster, and I remember him having a conversation with my mother about spelling, and he said, "Oh, I'm a terrible speller. I don't know whether I should be using Old English, Middle English, or New English." And he was that brilliant that he could spell words,
Sure.
back in whatever.
In Beowulf days.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he taught Chaucer, and I mean, I remember it was, it was unbelievable.
Well, and language evolves. Language evolves for a reason. Language is the most democratic medium there is, because if enough people make the same grammatical mistake often and long enough, it becomes standardized. You can split infinitives now. You couldn't split infinitives when I was in high school, And so I think that's interesting, and I think that it's good for students to know that language is a living entity that can evolve, and it's reflective of what we value culturally.
I'm always interested to find out what new words they've added to the dictionary based upon colloquialisms that have been adapted. What's the best thing about teaching here at MDI High School? Trust.
When I came here 16 years ago, the people who hired me basically said, "We're trusting you to create a fabulous sophomore curriculum. We don't have a canned curriculum. We don't buy things from corporations that say this is what you need to do. Like, we'll get you the books that you need, we'll get you the supplies that you need, but we're trusting your professional judgment." And that's never changed. I've definitely enjoyed a lot of latitude and a lot of collegiality, and a lot of permission and forgiveness to ask the kids and to help my students shape my curriculum, and have data from my students themselves to kind of rationalize a lot of my decisions, because if I worked in a different place, I'm not sure that I would have been granted those kinds of permissions. And I just have a lot of support here to do what I do. And that's not to say that I haven't been questioned. I certainly have, and I think that's important because that makes me self-reflect on my own practice in a critical and beneficial way. But a lot of schools, I'll go to conferences, and the sense that I get, because I've never taught in another school, so I'm a little myopic that way, but I'll go to conferences and I'll see teachers from other schools, and they're like, "Oh, administration's making us do this," or "Our district is making us do this," and I don't agree with it. And I have never had any kind of obstacle to asking my administration why or how, and the fact that this school and this district have consistently been so student-centered, and this community has been so student-centered that regardless of what's come down the legislative pike, we've always been able to remain true to the community and to the students we serve. And I really hope that that stays consistent throughout my career, because when it stops being about the students, I might have to find another career. So,
What do you do when you're not teaching?
I have a 4-year-old son.
Wow.
Who keeps me very busy.
What is his name?
His name is Fox.
Okay.
Yep. And he'll be 5 in June, and he's hilarious, and it's all about dragons. Right now my world is filled with dragons and dragon drawings, and yeah, he keeps me busy. I also I do a lot of freelance art as well. My first degree is actually in studio art, which some of my students know and some of them don't.
And what kind of art? Painting?
Some painting, some drawing. The thing that I've come most known for is tattoo design.
Really?
Actually. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Lots of flash. Lots and lots of flash over the years. It's a.
Do you? Do you have?
I do. I have a lot of tattoos.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Got them.
All right.
Know of which I speak. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if
No, it's a weird thing but I brought it up. So.
No, I don't think I could. It's so common.
It's pretty ubiquitous now. It is. And I have former students come to me with terrible, terrible sketches, and they're like, "I'm going to get this across my forehead." And I'm like, "No, you're not. You are not doing that. Let me give you a couple of ideas." And hopefully I've helped them that way.
Now,
too.
do you work with a tattoo
I recommend a
studio? To have is your work done?
I've never scratched.
Oh, okay.
I've never ever scratched. I never got certified or licensed to do that. But I definitely have a few local artists that I recommend.
Yeah.
And that I know what their strengths are in terms of what they can do in the world of tattoo. But mostly I just do the drawings. Yeah, I just do the drawings. And I help kids find things and talk to them about the commitment that a tattoo is, and kind of bring some gravitas to that, because going off and putting Tinkerbell on your bum, then it may or may not be the best choice.
When you're 18, it's a lot different when you're 35 or 44.
Exactly, and just like talking about how bodies age and what happens to skin, and the fact that ink spreads over time, and what looks cool now may look very different in 10, 15 years, and being in the sun. There's a lot of practical stuff to think about, and so it's a very interesting conversation when I do have students, get excited and come to me about, "I have an idea for a tattoo, and I want to get this here, and I want to get a mermaid across my back," and okay, let's just wait a second, let's talk about what it is that you're really interested in and why, and maybe you should think about this first, and have you talked to your mom and dad?
Normally I ask an ending question as to what's the one thing people don't know about you, but I think we've just...
I think that may have been it. Well, the people who know it really well. Yeah. But the people who don't know it might be a little shocked or delighted. I don't know.
I don't know. And it's funny because in this, as you were saying, I always think that when I go around, and I love to people watch. Mm-hmm. I love going to the folk festival in Bangor.
Oh yeah.
because
Fun.
it's fun just to watch people. And I'm amazed at the amount. I always say that Maine has to lead the country in tattoos per capita or something, and I don't know if that's true, or if it's just, or if it's just my small mind, because I haven't been, to traveling a lot like I used to, but it's just funny.
It's a lot more ubiquitous than it used to be, and it's a lot more accepted. It's gotten to, I read an article, I think in the Huffington Post, maybe sometime last year, that talked about how tattoos became a reason not to hire somebody 30 some odd years ago, and now having tattoos tells a corporation that you are asserting your individuality, and it's actually becoming, if it's not indifferent, then it's actually something that
it's a positive.
You come off as a creative individual and problem solver rather than a rabble rouser hooligan.
Yeah.
So the world has evolved in an interesting way, and it's where my roots are. So
that's
Yep.
So how old were you when you got your first tattoo?
Too young. Illegally young.
So you were under 18.
I was.
All right.
Yeah. But that's what you did in the 80s.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, yes. Although I don't,
Yeah.
yes, I do not have any tattoos, but I mean, it was a different time.
It was a different time. My teachers also bummed cigarettes from me in high school. It was just a different, and school is very, very different.
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, having grown up in Bermuda was just an entirely different culture as well.
I'll bet. It sounds really, really intriguing.
It was very interesting. All right, the camera's yours. What do you want to tell people?
I want to say thanks to the community for supporting such a great school and all of the work that we do here, and never hesitate to take advantage of the school or contact the school if you're ever curious about what's going on. The more involvement we have from the community, the stronger our school is going to be.
Perfect. That's this week, Meet the MDI Teacher with Christiane Cullens, and she shut the door here. Normally the door is open, and when the door is open, there's students coming in and out of the classroom. So it's a neat place to be, and I hope you take her advice and become involved in the community, or become involved in the school, because the more involved you are with the school, the more you're going to get out of it, and your students and your children will get out of it as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure you visit all the videos we have on the WDEA YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you.